Hey guys, it's Hein again. Welcome to today's video. We're going to continue looking at how do we stream Azure OpenAI from a .NET Web API into a React front end, and there are four main things we need to remember. First of all, when we look at sending our response from the OpenAI client, it needs to be JSON, right? And on the API side, in addition to that, we need a way to very clearly identify what the end of the object would look like. So we can't just use the normal curly brace because we're not always sure if we can say, all right, well, cut off the object from that point. And on the client side, we now need to basically buffer the stream until we are sure that we can have a fully complete JSON object. Now I've come up with what I think is a relatively easy approach to this problem. I'd love to hear your comments, so please drop them below if you think there's a better way to do this, or if you've got an alternative approach. Really excited to hear you guys comment on that. But let's get going. To start us off, I've done a little bit of work off camera, just extended our initial API. So I've got a get chat stream message, I've got the content type, everything's pretty much the same. I've introduced the cognitive search extension, and I've given it a bit of an idea around what type of bot are you. So it's very much similar to the system message that you'd use in ChatGPT. Where we're going to kick off today's video really is at this point over here, where we are going to pass the JSON object and start streaming that instead of just streaming text. So we can see here the Copilot's already got something going for us, and that's good. That is a good start because we know we can serialize this particular object. Now, the one challenge that I picked up is when we're going to look at ways to consume the API, at least understand what the objects look like, we need to remember that by default, we get camel case back. And when we stream the C# object that we get from the OpenAI client, it's going to be a normal sentence case. So that actually does give a bit of a problem on the TypeScript front later. So when we go and serialize this object using Newtonsoft, we want to do a formatting.none, and I want to include some formatting settings. So what I want to do is a contract resolver is equal to new Newtonsoft JSON serialization camel case property name contract resolver. Right. So basically what we're saying here is when we serialize the object into text to send it, we are going to say, all right, we'll go and make it camel case. So when we look at getting the objects back from the stream and we serialize them, it all fits what we would expect in a traditional API sense. So that's step one we need to do on the API front. The second thing we want to do over here is when we write to the body writer is introduce the JSON over there like that. But I said we need a clear way to identify what the end of this object looks like. So right now, if we write that, the end of the object might have, the two squirrely braces that we're used to seeing at the end, but it might not. So we cannot say, right, well, the end of the object looks like two squirrely braces or whatever the case might be. So what I'm saying is I'm going to add something very special over here. That's just an arbitrary character that I picked, right? Because that's not something I see every day. That's completely up to what you want to use. It could be something like this. It doesn't really matter. But the only thing that you need to remember, whatever you use at the end of this stream, because remember, we're just passing a normal string now, we need to use exactly the same character in the client. So we're going to take a look at how we do that. But from an API perspective, the good news is that's that. Now, in my initial video, I said we would want to use consume as much of the logic or process as much of the logic in the API and not too much of the client. But I did quite a bit of testing, and I haven't found a really concise and consistent way to do that from an API perspective. So I have to track back on that comment and say, all right, well, great, I'm going to consume this on the client side. Luckily, the logic isn't that bad. So from here on out, it's pretty straightforward. What we need to now do is just go into the client app and see how we're going to consume this. So if I go into app.tsx, I did a little bit of pre-work for us as well. I've just got a normal basic vanilla React app. I've got a text state object, and I've got a normal fetch data that's linked to a button. I've got the text decoding that we did last time and a single button. So I haven't really done much in this space. But a couple of things that we would want to do here. Now, you can do this in a varying amount of ways. I prefer to sort of split the text response from the citation response. It just feels easier for me to manage. So I'm going to introduce one more state variable for us. Use state, and I'm going to go call this a citation and set citation. And for now, all I'm going to do is make that an empty object, right? Now, because I'm using TypeScript, I will need to go and actually build out what this model looks like down the line, and that's fine. We'll do that in a second. Great. So a couple of things we need to change over here is just outside of the while loop. So just after we've got the reader, and just before we start looping through the responses, I'm going to add a variable called placeholder. Right, placeholder equal to empty string. Right, and that's all. We just want to keep that guy here. A couple of things that we're going to do here. So I'm just going to move the line over there and create a normal guard clause behind, or just before it, using the checking of the value object. I'm going to go return. Okay, so that's going to be good. So now what we want to do here is we're saying, all right, well, first of all, let's go and decode the text. So that's pretty straightforward. I'm going to go and say placeholder is whatever placeholder is at the moment plus the newly decoded text. Now, why that's important, remember I said the object we get back, we're not exactly sure how that object looks. So we know, however, that at some point in time, and if we're really unlucky, that's what the whole response, but at some point in time when the reader reads, we will find that weird character that we use to identify the end of the string in our program.cs file over here, right? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to say, great, well, if not placeholder dot ends with our character that we picked, then I'm going to say, all right, well, just continue, right? Go and find or go and grab the next piece of the stream that from the API and let's carry on. But if placeholder actually does end with that, then we know we have a string which has at least one valid JSON object in, because it would actually be a representation of that Azure Chat completion streaming update. So what we're going to do now is we're going to say, all right, well, if that's the case, if we have that string in placeholder, I'm going to go const messages is placeholder.split. So pretty straightforward. We're just going to split our string, and then I'm going to reset placeholder, and then I'm going to loop through messages, right? Yeah, that's actually good. I'm going to take that out for now, but yeah, I think Copilot did a good job. So I'm going to put a breakpoint over there because we're going to need that one later. But let's quickly take a look at what we did, right? So everything's exactly the same as we did last time. So the recipe stays virtually the same. I've got placeholder over there, and we're basically saying, all right, well, go and loop through the stream and add the newly decoded text to placeholder until it has that. So, and then we just loop through the messages. Now, the reason why this little piece over here is, you know, it's seemingly unimportant, but what I noticed is sometimes when it splits the string, we get an empty string at the end, or a white space at the end, and then the JSON parsing over here just breaks. So what we're going to do now, I'm going to quickly run the debugger off screen, just get everything wired up, and I will meet you guys here when we reach this breakpoint. I'm just going to quickly add this to watch, and I'm going to go expand that. And what's important here is we will do two things mostly. So the logic that we need to do, or the logic we need to handle in our client-side code basically is, well, go and check if that Azure Extensions context object exists, right? And then we've got our role with our message with our role and its particular sort of citations and content. And then we need to go and actually break this content property of the tool message into, and just pass that as a JSON object as well. And that's luckily quite an easy object to build out. So what we're going to do, I'm going to quickly build out the two models for us so you guys can see what we need to look at. But if you want to go through the process of just stepping through these properties one at a time, that's effectively all you need to do to come up with these, what the actual TypeScript type or interface needs to look like. So I'm going to do that, and I will see you guys in a few seconds. Okay, so we're back, and I just built out a few models for us. I'm just quickly going to hop to the models folder over here, and I will show you guys what we did, and I'll show you guys how I found it. All right. So first of all, I had a chat response, which and that has a content update and an Azure Extensions context. Within that, we will have an Azure Extensions context object, which is going to have an array of messages, which is this chat message type, and that has role and content. From there on out, I've just got a citation message, and that's got just a string. Right now, we could, in theory, break this down. So in this citation response, say, all right, let's just use chat message. You could do that. One of the things that's worth calling out is in the citation message, if you build out the object in its entirety, you've got stuff like chunk ID, which is relatively important when you want to give the user an idea of which part of the document or which part of the indexed content you're referencing, because it breaks it down into chunks. But horses for courses, right? So that's the minimum that we need to work with. I basically just took the data object and I copied it back, copied it into a new file. So I literally copied value, and I got my content update up from there, Azure Extensions with messages, with role, with content. And now we can do a few things. Now, it's probably, this method is becoming quite long, so it's probably worth breaking it out. But for the sake of just following the sequence, we're going to do it all in one go. So the first thing I want to do is the first thing we want to do here is say, in our citation, I actually want to mark this as a citation message or as a citation response. And the reason for that, if we had to look at our citation response, we'll get the intent and we will get the message array. So I'm going to go here. First things first, JSON parse data can now be marked as a chat response. And I can say, all right, well, if data dot Azure Extension context, then I can go and handle the citation, and that's great. And then if the data dot content update, then I can go and handle setting the text. Right, this is the easier one. We're gonna here just say set text, which is just our state object that we set above, but we don't want to just replace it. We want to go previous and oh, come on, previous plus Copilot's getting a little bit excited. Cool. So when we get the text, we just want to keep appending it as we go on. So that's cool. And over here, what we want to do is we will, if we were to look at this object back in our models folder, this is going to have a message array, and that is going to, or chat message array, and that's going to have content. So the first thing we want to do is go and pass that content into a citation response. Let citation response is equal to JSON.parse data.azure blah blah dot messages 0 dot content. Citation response, I'm just going to go and set my state variable, and that's about it. Right now we can flesh that out, and you can build more clauses around checking if citations, if it's got zero sort of citations that it references, or if the intent is null or empty, or whatever the case might be. But for now, just to keep us going, that's what we need to do. So we created some models based on the response we got back from the API. We passed that as the model, and we've got the content update as the text that we're going to append. Now, what I'm going to do here, I'm just going to add some very basic, let's just go with intent. I'm just going to add some basic React code for us. So I'm going to go if citation.intent. Yes, that's good. We can use that. And we will do an H1 over here. Cool. And then what we want to do is an H1 and cool, do the citations. And then we want to do citation, not citations, and not entirely, and citations, not citations, dot map. Just need to add a dot content. Okay, that should work. That should be fine. Cool. So if we were to take a look at what our app looks like right now, as I said, very basic. I've got a fetch data button that's going to trigger our method. We've got our intent, text, and citation. So if we were to click this, we can just wait. It'll hit the breakpoint in a second. Okay, so all breakpoints are disabled, and I will see you guys in a second. Okay, so we can see here that it's come through and the text is busy running. So that's great, right? As I said, I'm going to zoom in a little bit just so you guys can see what we've got working on. So the intent that it brings back from the citation response basically says, listen, this is what I'm using as the search terms that I'm passing to cognitive search. The text response over here is exactly what we're used to. We'll notice there that we've got a doc3 and we've got markdown text over here. So we need to remember that that's markdown. And then we've got a whole list of citations. So I'm going to park it there for today because we've been busy for a while, and what we'll do in the next video, we will build this out and actually make this content a bit more usable, to see how we can actually build some sort of interface where we've got references and we can go and click on these references and actually make it look and feel like something that people can use. So that's it for today. It was a bit of a long one, but we got through both what we need to do on the API side as well as what we need to do on the client side. Guys, if you like this, please like and subscribe. It really helps the channel grow. I'm trying to get this out to more of the .NET community because I do think it's underrepresented in this space. So yeah, I'd really appreciate that. And until next time, stay safe.